If you were watching this program last week, as you should have been, you will have seen my interview with New South Wales Deputy Premier John Barilaro about how he and his national colleagues wanted to revise their own government's koala conservation controls. Now, he's worried it put too many restrictions on landholders. Barilaro said he was prepared to go to the wall over it.
We've been trying to negotiate with the Minister for Planning. We've been trying to negotiate an outcome for the people of regional rural New South Wales. I don't blame his frustration, but he's not alone. And as the leader of the National Party, I'll always back one of my people in when he's fighting on policy, and that's exactly what he's doing. He has my support, has the support of the party. So
you go to the wall on this one. It's fix this legislation or the coalition is finished?
Well, my view is simple. We have to fix the legislation. There's actually not an option for politics here. It's either we fix it, or I'll bring a repeal bill in, or I'll bring a bill in to override it, and then we'll test the numbers on the parliament floor.
Well, incredibly, today that's the way it played out. The Nats, the coalition partners of the New South Wales government, have walked out effectively, saying they'll sit on the crossbenches. That effectively ends a formal coalition arrangement. Now, this all played out today, and John Barilaro said that's the case. He said they still want to be ministers, but they're going to sit on the crossbench in Parliament.
We're not just going to surrender our cabinet positions, our ability to fight for regional rural New South Wales, because I know there are Liberal members that would love to see that. They'd love to see me resign today. They would like to see members resign today, but that would be actually giving in. We're going to sit back and fight.
Well, it's going to be a long night because the New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian, the Liberal leader, has said they've got to make up their mind, because if she doesn't have their word overnight, in the morning she's going to be getting rid of the Nationals from her cabinet and installing new ministers. An extraordinary fracturing of the government here. I'm joined now by the New South Wales Nationals chairman, Andrew Fraser. Andrew, how could you guys be doing this to what's been such a successful and sensible government?
Chris, we have a situation that's been going on since last November, and we haven't had any resolution from the Liberal Planning Minister or Environment Minister. We have a Liberal Planning Minister who is quite happy to sign off on the destruction of the endangered Cumberland woodland in Western Sydney to make way for housing estates. My ask is, if you are going to have offsets, biodiversity offsets in regional New South Wales, how are you going to supply the fibre and the timber for those homes? How are you going to supply the food?
We understand you think this koala conservation is imposing an onerous burden on landholders in the bush, and you've got to sort it out. We get that. But why blow up the government to do it? This is an extreme measure.
Well, is it the Nationals blowing up the government, or is it the government not listening to their coalition partner who had put forward a plan that would not only see the survival and increase the doubling of the numbers of koalas in regional New South Wales? Why will they not accept reasoned argument that we put forward, the parliamentary parties put forward? I mean, this is the full parliamentary party saying to the government of the day, we are prepared to sit on the crossbench over this issue. Well, now, none of us want to see that happen.
But instead of sitting down and working out a compromised position here, the Premier is saying, well, hand in your resignations tomorrow. Either stay in the tent or hand in your resignations. I'll appoint new ministers. Now, my point is that when you talk about the way state governments in this country have completely botched and overplayed their handling of the coronavirus issue, the pandemic, Gladys Berejiklian and John Barilaro, the New South Wales government, stands out as the most sensible, pragmatic government in the country, and yet they've blown themselves up over the koala issue.
No, we haven't blown ourselves up. What we've actually done is we've said to the Liberals, here is a policy, here is what you want to achieve, and you can achieve it very easily by adopting what we have there. We want to see koalas survive. I've said today, probably one of the few areas in Sydney you'll ever see a koala is Taronga Park Zoo. There are koalas in Sydney, in the Northern Beaches, Lane Cove National Park, etc. But at the end of the day, that is not affecting farming and forestry, as this will affect the farms and forests in regional New South Wales.
Sure, but you resolve the issue by talking about this in Cabinet and in the joint party room and getting a resolution, not by taking your bat and ball and marching out.
Chris, this has been going on since November, when individual members of the Nats went and spoke to the Planning Minister and said this is the effect this state environmental planning policy will have. He's ignored that, told us, no, that won't happen. The reality is it will happen. For the last 6 months, this has stayed inside the National Party room. Today they had a meeting. And I can tell you now the issues in regional New South Wales. I was in Lismore on Monday night.
It's very quickly, Andrew, your ministers will resign in the morning, or will they go back into the tent?
I haven't spoken to John Barilaro since the Premier's ultimatum, but at the end of the day, 13 members sitting on the crossbench when a government only has a majority of 2. I say to Gladys, and I've tried to ring her, let's sit down and talk about this.
That'd be a good idea.
Let's really look at the solution we've put forward.
All right, sorry to cut you off then, Andrew. I appreciate it. We do need to wrap up. Thanks for your time. Andrew Fraser there, who's the chairman of the New South Wales Nats. What a shambles. As I said, we've talked about all the shambles of pandemic management by state governments. New South Wales has been the leader of the pack. They're tearing themselves apart because of koalas.